guys. How we feeling, everybody?
Feeling great.
Okay, I mean, it's... You took what I said literal. You went as short as you can go, which I love.
Here's our look.
Wait a minute. I can't get a good light on it. Hold on a second. Wow. Dude, nice tower. John, what's happening, dude? It's not looking good. And I'm not gonna focus on Grandin. Oh no. Dude, good try, guys. Hey, good try. This is a last ditch effort. They're trying their hardest. 20 seconds. Marshmallows down. The pressure. The pressure. Vince, can you handle it? I can't. 4, 3, 2, 1. This one is just so good. Wow. It's the height of a water bottle. Crazy. All right, it's as tall as theirs at that height.
Yes.
All right. And the winners. Hold on, let's get a winner's shot here. Get in there, guys. Well done. Yeah.
Earlier in the year, it's just like, what do I want to talk about? What's the message that I want to deliver to you guys? And it's perspective. And you know, it's so funny. I call Eber. I'm super excited because it's like whenever I get an idea, it's just like I'm like Eber, like dude, this is what I think. What do you think? And I think there might have even been a different word that we were talking about. And it's just like, all right, no, let's do perspective. And what is perspective? And it's the definition is a particular attitude toward or way of regarding something, a point of view. And the longer the time goes, people want to share their perspective, and they want other people to know their story and to know where they've come from and what they've been through, and that's so special for each and every one of you. And I'm happy and I'm so excited to hear your own perspectives later today. We do have some great speakers today that want to share theirs with you. But everyone has a different point of view on life, right? What you should eat, how much you should exercise. Sometimes that changes. 3 years ago, I exercised 6 days a week. Now it's not once a week.
Doesn't look like it. You look great.
It's diet, which actually, Dan really encouraged.
Please don't say I inspired you.
Okay, sorry, you encouraged me. But you do. You encourage so many people, Dan. So it was just, it's always, you talk about keto, and so, anyways.
You look great.
Off topic. Thanks. How much you should exercise, or another thing right now is where you should be at with your life, right? It's just like, man, measuring my life against someone else's when really you can't.
All right, guys. Cool. So I would like to kind of take the time today to stand up here and share with you my story and some things that have helped shape me prior to joining the company, and how I've been able to gain some perspective since joining the company in 2014. So I was kind of going over this with my wife, and we were talking, and we're like, it's almost been 10 years, just, an amazing thing. And I start thinking, I'm like, almost a third of my life, I've been blessed to be with this company. So it's just, it's an honor. It's amazing. So with that being said, I would just like to let you guys know what Google says about gaining perspective, okay? So to gain perspective, to put your specific idea, problem, or situation in a larger context, which could contribute to new approaches and solutions you haven't considered. So your new perspective changes the meaning of the event, which changes the feelings you have in response, which changes the actions you take. So I'm going to kind of take you guys back a little bit into my upbringing, okay? So for me, when Sarah was speaking, and just speaking about motherhood, it's just really, really, hit home for me. So for me, growing up, my mother raised me and my younger brother. At times I remember she was working 3 jobs, and just, never complained, always had a positive attitude. So she was a huge positive influence for me in my life. And kind of the 2 things that she really instilled in me was hard work and gratitude. So gratitude is kind of one of those, weird things, right? When I started thinking about it, it's like, when did I really learn, how to be grateful? So in thinking about that, it wasn't just because my mother was telling me, right, be grateful, right, which she did a lot, but it was really in her actions, right? So it was through the ups and downs and really seeing how she handled situations, especially in tough situations. That really made me have a sincere appreciation for her and, for everything that we had. So, for me, gratitude is a huge thing. So when I think about having a positive perspective, one of the main ingredients is gratitude. No matter the circumstance or situation, if you can find a way or something to be grateful for, I believe that's going to translate to positive actions. I think we can all agree that gratitude can be very powerful. So a little bit of my backstory prior to joining Clean Freak in Arizona in 2014. So I graduated high school in 2010. Pretty early on, I think probably sophomore year, kind of right around that time is when I started working. And I kind of knew that I wasn't going to, pursue anything as far as college and stuff like that. So really all I knew is how to put my head down and go to work. So one thing I really wasn't good at was, let's see here. So it really is planning and executing, right? I would just kind of shoot from the hip, per se, and kind of hope for the best. So after high school, I never really knew what I wanted as far as a career. So within those 4 years of me graduating high school and before joining Clean Freak, I did a lot of things. I worked everywhere. So from doing concrete work to landscaping to being a ranch hand at one point to shoveling snow. So believe it or not, there's some snow in northern Arizona where I grew up. So, but yeah, I did everything. So about 2 years before joining Clean Freak, I joined this call center. So I went from doing all that. Before that, I was a ranch hand, and then I started working at a call center. We actually moved down to Phoenix. Payson, Arizona, where I grew up, is about an hour and a half northeast of Phoenix. So we moved down there, and I was just kind of doing my thing there. And about 2 years in, a little less than 2 years in, I remember my boss coming up to us and basically saying, "Hey, you guys got 2 weeks. Like the company's going under. You guys have 2 weeks before we kind of stop operations." So at the time, I was just kind of scrambling for work. My mindset was just I need a stopgap job. I need to find something to just kind of help me pay the bills for the meantime, right? So I remember driving, all sorts of places over by. I lived in Mesa. But I remember seeing an ad on Craigslist for a car wash, $3 car wash. So in that area, Chandler Boulevard and like Dobson, there's like a Safeway, there's a few other little spots. So I just go around asking for applications and whatnot. So I go to Safeway, and then it was right next door basically. I drive down to the car wash, and I see Jay Gomez outside, and he has a chair with a little, now hiring banner. So I'm like, oh wow, perfect, right? So I just pull in there, I get a car wash, a $3 car wash, and then I start talking to Jay a little bit. So he was hiring for, there was a new location coming up. At this time, they had 5 locations, and their 6th location in Scottsdale, I think it was Via Linda, was about to open up. So anyways, I get an interview the next day. In my interview, Vince was there. I don't know if you remember Vince, but it was him and Chris Lorella. So for you guys that know Chris Lorella, it was just kind of funny going to this interview. Chris Lorella was a tiny, tiny little skinny guy, right? And then, you got young Vince right next to him. So I thought, it was kind of funny coming into this interview, right? And young buff Vince, right? So, but anyways, I go into this interview, right? And I get hired on the spot. So yeah, I just kind of went into it, just kind of thinking, I need to pay my bills. I'm going to do this, as long as I can until something better comes about. And that was just kind of my mindset always growing up, right? I would just it was shooting from the hip. So I started doing that. Eventually, my wife gets pregnant, and she was pregnant with our first child. So I needed a second job. So I ended up getting a second job working at a gas station, night shifts, probably about 3-4 times a week. So I'd go close at the car wash, about 1 to close, and then go work a graveyard shift about 3 days a week at the gas station. So I was just kind of doing my thing for a little bit, probably a little less than a year. And then at the time, the guy running the location, his name was Julian. He was an assistant manager. He ended up quitting. So that left a spot open, right? It was kind of, it wasn't planned, right? He just kind of left out of nowhere. So this kind of left a spot open for me, and I always kind of make the joke that, I got the role by default. There was, I think a couple of full-time employees at the time, and everybody else, part-time. They were either high schoolers or, kids going to college. So there wasn't too many options out there, right? So I became the assistant manager. At the time, I was 22 years old. Very little to none management experience. And I remember we started going to these manager meetings, right, down at the corporate office. And we're just being downloaded with, information on growing your business and how to create good culture, right, at your stores. So for me, being a CSR, I found it very easy to implement, all these philosophies, right? Hustle, attitude, right? I mean, I was always on time for work, right? And once, I became an assistant manager, holding the people to that standard, it was a whole different ballgame. It was a little bit tough for me at first, right? I mean, I was working side by side with these guys, for nearly a year, and then all of a sudden, I'm kind of their authority figure. So looking back, really, I didn't have the time and the experience, right? So, and maybe not quite bought in all the way. So this kind of leads me into, several different things that kind of transpired after this that kind of made me change my perspective a little bit. So I remember one day I was working and I get a call from HR. So she calls me and she's like, hey, your work permit has expired yesterday. Like, you actually can't work, right? You actually have to leave the property right now. I'm sorry, but as soon as this comes in, then we're able to get you on. So my work permit, at the time, every 2 years I had to renew it. And I did the process correctly, but just the government, lapsed a little bit. So they took a little extra time, and then my work permit expired. So there was about a 2-week period where I didn't have work. So at this time, I was very lucky. One of my buddies owned a landscape business, so I was doing a little bit of that. Gronin really helped me out. He had a little concession stand business, so I would go help him out on the weekends. And he was paying me very graciously to, sell popcorn and soda pop. So I was very, very grateful for that. So yeah, within those 2 weeks, I think Stephen actually came and helped out one of my sites during this time. So during that 2 weeks that I was gone, I was made aware that there was an incident that happened at the site. I think it was a misretract on like a winch, something like that, and it ripped off like a big CB antenna or something like that. It ended up, hitting multiple vehicles. So not only the car behind, but I don't remember. I think it was like 3 cars that were, affected. So I heard about it, right, and another week passed, and then I come to work. I didn't really think too much of it, since I wasn't there. So so I get back to work, and things are going smooth. One day, Craig McDowell pulls up to the site. And yeah, I didn't really know why he was there, right? But he made it very clear right away. And it was basically to have the conversation, and somebody had to be held accountable, right, for damages to the vehicles. So he had a conversation there with me and Chris, my district manager. And I just remember, having a little bit of a victim mentality. That was kind of my reaction at first, right? Just kind of excuses, right? Like I wasn't working, right? Like this guy, new hire. I think we had somebody working from another side at the time. So just, all these things, kind of go into my head on really for myself why it wasn't my fault, right? That this happened. So anyways, I don't remember. I think it was my district manager. So he made me write an email to ownership. And I remember just reflecting, through this email, and it was really good for me because I was just able to take ownership. I was able to kind of look back and just see, the things that we were just dropping the ball on certain things, right? And to me, it was just, I was inexperienced, I was young, right? And this was just a big learning experience for me, but I was able to take ownership in everything that happened, right? And after this, it just, it showed in my actions, right? So to me, this really helped me buy in. So up to that point, obviously, hard work and gratitude had gotten me that far, but I knew that wasn't going to be enough, right? I knew I had to get out of my comfort zone a little bit if I really wanted to be successful within the company. So going into kind of this next phase, I started buying in. I started applying everything that we were being taught at these corporate meetings, and I started seeing results, right? And I started seeing it within the company, and just all sorts of little things started transpiring to where it was very positive for me in my life, and so these things really they help me navigate through the struggles in a more positive way. So instead of being a victim or having a victim mentality or quick to anger or quick to write somebody off, I was able to view things from a better perspective. And I think we work for a company that gives us the tools to be able to navigate, day to day. So they really set us up for success, right? So yeah, all these things kind of happen, and one thing I remember specifically, I don't know why, but this just, it always sticks with me, but I was working with this guy named Brian McGowan. Those of you guys that know Brian, right, so I think we all know somebody that's like Brian McGowan, but this guy just loved to talk, right, like he would never stop talking. A lot of the times he wouldn't say much, right, but he would just still talk. But every now and then there was like some gold nuggets that would come out of his mouth, and this one I just kind of ran with it. I remember it really stuck with me. But now I know it as stewardship. But Brian said something along the lines of, I think it's amazing that Mark and Craig hand you guys the keys to this multi-million-dollar business, and we just get to sit here and play with all these toys, right? So I think that day we were fixing vacuums, right? And Gowan wasn't the guy to go in there and get his hands dirty, but he would just always kind of help out. He'd always just kind of be there. And I remember this day we were doing all sorts of stuff in the back room, outside. I think we were messing with the coupler on the vacuum. And yeah, kind of by the day's end, I just remember him saying, like, I can't believe like Mark and Craig just hand you guys the keys and you guys get to play with all these toys all the time, right? So for me, I really took that and ran. It really gave me this sense of responsibility, right? That really I never had. And yeah, just kind of ran with it. So now I know that as stewardship. So stewardship is defined as a person who manages for another his property or financial affairs, one who administers anything as the agent of another. And I think, yeah, we're all in that position now, right? To steward our business, we have all these tools, disposable to us, and we're in a really good spot. So looking back after this trial, I believe it opened up opportunity for me in the future, right? So obviously, after failing, right, trials and errors, I took that as a positive, and I took that, as making a change and truly buying in. So after that, year after year, new opportunity came about. It literally just about every year, I was changing sites. So each opportunity took some sacrifice, but new learning opportunities came about, and plenty more trial and error. So I think after that, I worked at about 4 different locations, and then helping out at several grand openings before I got the chance to move out to Yuma. So Yuma is about 3+ hours away from Phoenix. And yeah, but before, I raised my hand, right, I was ready to take the next step. I felt like I had enough time, enough experience to go, to kind of expand my wings and take this leap of faith. But there was still a little bit of doubt, right? Like I was going to basically, it was a ground up site, brand new, right? I was going to have to, hire 8 new people. So it was a little bit scary. There was a little bit of doubt there. And even though I had this time and experience, I still had a little bit of doubt in myself and whether I was able to do the job or not. So I go out to Yuma. It turns out to be a very well off site, made good money. So it turned out to be very fruitful for me. So I remember just applying what I was taught, and it worked out, right? I was able to see results. I still keep in touch with a couple of the guys from Yuma, so it was it was nothing but good. And as I look around, this room, Yuma was kind of out in this island, right? And I feel like this conference, it's full of you guys that are out in island, right? Abilene, San Angelo, right? Even Austin, right? We got 2 locations, but we don't get quite the traffic. The sales guys don't come about, right, as often as maybe New Braunfels and San Antonio. So kind of my big takeaway for you guys there is really, I think we can look at that, 1 or 2 ways, as a positive or negative, right? We can, either seize the opportunity and be that person, right? I think we just have the ability to have that positive influence on the team, right? I think we're always looking to see who can influence us, and I think we're in the position really to influence the rest of the team. So yeah, and that's kind of the way I looked at it. Out in Yuma, it was just very fruitful, and I really enjoyed my time. And yeah, right after that, I got the opportunity to come out to Texas. I came out to Texas as a GM of 1 location, and obviously we're growing pretty fast out here. So yeah, now I'm multi-site district manager, and it's been awesome. So cool. So I'm going to just kind of rattle off some quotes that I got while I was kind of going through this. None of them are from me, so I just got a lot of them from the internet podcasts. One of them from Vince. Action is required in order to change your desires and your thoughts. Positive thoughts are fueled by your actions. So half the battle is trying. To be consistent, you need productive use of time, use your resources, and turn off distractions. So when I think about that, for me, turn off distractions, I'm a big baseball fan. So a Diamondback fan, diehard. And for me, in order to watch a Diamondback game, they usually play West Coast time. And in order for me to watch the whole game out here, it's like I have to stay up till 11 o'clock at night. I know that's not going to be productive for me the next day, right? So it's really little things like that, right, that are going to help you be more productive. So I'm going to leave you guys with this. So what am I practicing today to keep a healthy perspective? So it's kind of funny. About 2 weeks ago, my wife sends me this podcast from Craig Rochelle and a bumper sticker that said, "Hope is not a good plan." And, I was busy at the time, but I just read, the bumper sticker, "Hope is not a good plan." And I didn't get a chance to go through the podcast, right? But on my way home, I got a chance to listen to the podcast, and I'm like, oh, that totally makes sense. But at the end of the podcast, Craig Rochelle quotes Proverbs 21:5. And it says, "Good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. So hard work has its rewards." So for me, I'm working on making a plan and executing. So that's it for me, guys. Thank you.
Dang, good job, Ever. Seizing the opportunity.
A lot, and Justin told me, you can
say no if you want to. Okay, I got my regional manager on the left, district manager on my right. No's not in my vocabulary. But throughout the course of the story that I'm fixing to tell y'all, y'all are going to see me extremely vulnerable and very emotional. So again, bear with me. In order for y'all to understand everything that I've been through, I have to start at the beginning. Before Watershed, I was a general manager with a company called Schlotzsky's back home in New Braunfels. It was actually my ex that led me here. He had just started with the company and always came home raving about, this is such a great company, this and this and this happened today, and I love this company. And I could see it was written all over his face. And it changed my perspective on how a company should treat an employee. It made me realize that there's a place where you can be valued as a person and not just treated as somebody on the payroll, and I wanted that. So I applied for a site manager position in New Braunfels. Unfortunately, I didn't get it. I was counteroffered with an S2 position, and I hesitated on taking that because I knew it was going to be a major pay decrease for me and my family. But like I said, I had seen what this company was doing for my ex and how fast things were progressing for him, and I knew that it was possible for me. So I took a leap of faith and I made the move, and it was probably the best move I've ever made. When I started with Watershed, I started at NB3 or Papa's. It was a very, very rough start, from the track breaking every day, sometimes multiple times a day, to me feeling like I wasn't going to be able to reach my full potential where I was. I started to question if I had made the right move. But I knew what this company was capable of. We've made our success on, serving our team and serving our people. So I knew it was possible. And I held out hope. But I never said anything. I waited and I watched. And after a little while, I still didn't see any sort of change. And it started to change my perspective on the company. It made me feel like it wasn't the place for me. I had made a big mistake. It wasn't going to work. So at that point, I decided to change my own perspective. And I called a meeting with Ever, and I laid it all out on the table. And I explained to him, like, I don't think that, me and Papa's is going to work. I want to go somewhere else. Send me to NB1, send me to Uber, send me to San Antonio, but I don't want to be here anymore. And he told me, he was like, just give it time. He said, just hang tight and give it time. So I did. And I knew he had taken what I said to heart, because from that day forward, every opportunity he got to teach me and to grow me, he did. Mind you, he had just been promoted to district manager at the time, had so much on his plate, and he still made time for me. And then I also went through like 4 site managers, and then Arthur came along, and he as well taught me and grew me. So thank y'all for that.
Thank you.
So with that, I made A1 6 months after I was hired. I was growing, I was learning. So much to the point that when the talk of Abilene got brought up, my ex was still with the company at the time. We were both first in line for both side manager positions in Abilene. But my ex made a huge mistake. He stole from the company. And there went Abilene. I was so angry because I felt like I had this great opportunity in front of me and it had been taken. But what I was concerned with the most is what the company was gonna think of me. And I was gonna be guilty by association. They proved that was not the case. I made a name for myself. I wasn't just known as so-and-so's wife. I was known as Sarah Bellucci from Papa's. And with that, it kind of helped me realize that if Abilene was where I was meant to be, it would have happened. So again, I changed my perspective and I waited because I knew bigger things were coming. And I just focused on myself, and I continued to improve myself 1% every day, and I still continue to do that. And then shortly after that, I got a great curveball thrown at me. I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. Mind you, she is a rainbow child. I've had 2 miscarriages before her. Of course, you know, when I told the company that I was pregnant, the normal concerns come up of, okay, are you on any restrictions? How long are you gonna work? You know, what is your plan? And I just let them know, like, yes, you know, I do have a few restrictions, but I'm gonna work as long as I can. And then it came to the decision to repair Papa's track for the first time. Part of that, because anybody that knows me knows I love to get dirty. My hands are still dirty from a repair we did last night. But I was 6 months pregnant. That was just not in the cards for me. So instead of them telling me, hey, unfortunately, you're going to be out of work for about a week, Eva called me and said, hey, I have an opportunity for you to go help out at Patty B. Are you interested? Yes, sir. Let them know I'm good to go. And it was then that once again my perspective for this company was changed. It was molded back into what I knew this company was made of and was capable of. Because everybody that I met at Pat Booker was phenomenal. They made me feel so welcome, just even for the short time that I was there. But unfortunately, you know, as my pregnancy progressed, I started suffering from severe migraines. And it took me out on maternity leave. But even with going out on maternity leave, you know, corporate was a huge help. You know, they made sure my insurance was covered. They took care of me. But where I was really tested on how I perceive things was a week after my daughter was born. Because my ex had been arrested and he's currently sitting in a state prison. I've been doing this by myself for over a year now. I'm sorry, guys.
You got this, Sarah.
It was at that moment that I realized that I was staring down the barrel of one of the toughest decisions that I would ever have to make in my entire life. And I had 2 choices. I could either let it destroy me and let my kids suffer for it, or I could put my big girl pants on, lace up my boots, and do what needed to be done. And that's exactly what I did. So about 3 months after my ex was arrested, I was facing eviction. I was on the verge of losing my car. And it was rough. So I knew that I had to do something. At that point, I was looking at moving in with my mom. Until I got a phone call one day from my brother that said, hey, the house that your sister just moved out of is available. He wants this much a month, it's yours if you want it. So I talked to Eva and I asked him, hey, you know, what's it gonna require? You know, what's all involved with a location transfer? And he said, I just gotta make a phone call. Why, what's going on? And so I sat him down and I explained everything. And I said, I'm gonna need you to make that phone call. mind you, this was 3 months after this happened. I was back in a watershed uniform 3 weeks after my daughter was born. Once he made the phone call to Stephen, we set up a Zoom meeting. I met the team from Waco, packed my stuff up, and I moved. And I remember there was one thing Ever told me before I left. He said, as much as we hate to see you go, I think Waco will be really good for you. Only at that time, he didn't know how right he was. Fast forward to my first day at Waco 1. I was scared out of my mind. Turns out, however, I didn't have anything to be scared of. Everybody in Waco made me feel so welcome, made me feel so at home. I felt like I'd been there my entire watershed career. I took what I had learned from New Braunfels and I brought it and I mixed it with what they had created in Waco. And we hit the ground running. A couple months after I moved to Waco 2 actually I think was in the process of being built when I moved. But we were reaching the point of finalization. And I got offered, you can either stay at Waco 1 or you can go to Waco 2. So I made the decision to go to Waco 2. As the finalization of Waco 2 came about, Waco 1 was reaching the point where we had 2 teams worth of staff at one location. So Brennan and I stepped back, went to Waco 2, and we helped finish building Waco 2. Time of my life. It consisted of a lot of late nights, blood, sweat, some of my tears, but it was worth it. With the grand opening of Waco 2, it kept me busy. It kept me distracted. But as the dust started to settle, it all came creeping back in. The last 9 months of my life have tested me more than I have ever been, but I keep pushing. And it's in large part to those 2 and that man over there in that chair. They've seen me at my highest highs and my lowest lows, but they never fail to remind me I'm stronger than I realize. This company has made a shed head for life. This is the company I plan on retiring from.
Nice.
All because of their willingness to serve not just me, but every employee who wears a watershed uniform. Now, I'd be lying if I said that I hadn't thought about going other places where there's opportunity for more money, because I mean, who doesn't want more money, especially in today's economy? It's rough. But every time I do, just something in me feels wrong. I feel like I'm betraying the very people who have helped me. But basically, the moral of my story is this. No matter how hard life hits you, it's up to you to choose how to respond. Sure, it's okay to take a moment and let whatever it is sink in. It's even okay to be upset or angry about it. But what you've got to do is you've got to let a few tears fall, take a few deep breaths, and grind it out. It's easy to question, why me? And what did I do to deserve this? Because trust me, I've done it plenty of times. But that's not going to get you where you're ultimately supposed to be. Find something that helps drive you. For me, it's the 2 kids I have waiting for me back home. Because I know that every move I make, they are watching. And the one thing they will never be able to say is, Mommy gave up. No, I haven't been able to spend time with my kids like I'd like, because I put in the late nights, I put in the extra days, I put in the 12-hour shifts. But my son notices. He's 7 years old and already talking about working for this company. Talking about, Mommy, am I working at Waco 1 or am I working at Waco 2? What's my clock-in number gonna be? That's what this company does. And it's amazing. Sometimes we are the victim of other people's choices, but it's ultimately going to be up to us to decide how we move forward from them. And it's okay to only have enough strength to make it 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, even 1 minute at a time. That's literally me every day. There's some days I don't know how I'm going to make it till tomorrow. That's okay. You just have to continue to tell yourself everything happens for a reason. It will happen when it's supposed to, how it's supposed to, and why it's supposed to. You may not understand why, and sometimes we're not meant to. It just is. You have to trust the process. But when things, whether it be in your personal life or work, get rough, you have to stop and think to yourself, where do I go from here? And what can I do to take control of the situation? That's all I have.
Mr. Mark McDowell with us. Going on God's perspective of you.
Thanks, Justin, or Stephen.
Close. I know we look alike. What do you call him? Justin. All right.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks for being here today. Justin, I chuckle when I hear stories about me and about how I reacted to certain situations. When you talk about Tunnel Down, oh yeah, back in the day that was my hot button. Would you say as I get older I'm mellowing out? I'm chilling out, huh? There's some areas probably I get more passionate in than I didn't used to be, but I know that one, because we always hear Tunnel Down. I'm like, okay, thanks. And you never, right? The guys who are sending that out, you never hear from me again, right? I'm chilling out in my old age, thank God, because I was a fiery one. But Tristan, Sarah, and Arthur, thank you so much for getting up here. Like I know the two of you said it was your first time ever speaking up in front of a crowd. That's terrifying. So to face that fear. And Arthur, how about you?
All I've really done is like playing music, playing shows.
Okay. Yeah, I remember you playing the guitar at that retreat in front of 70 people. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much. Great stories. And yes, I guess I was thinking about personal testimonies. Tyler, of course. Yes, exactly. All the speakers to get up and do that takes a lot. That's scary, and gosh, I'm still scared. And it's 20 years later, and it never gets comfortable. So, anyway, Stephen asked that I get up here and speak regarding perspective, and specifically, he gave me a title to talk about God's perspective. And so I just want to share a couple things regarding that. Understand before I get started that these are my feelings, what I've discovered on my journey, and so in no way am I telling you how to think, what to believe. That's a personal choice. And I know after 24 years of this journey with God, I know that it's impossible for me to make you do anything. So I gave up on that venture a long time ago, but maybe some of these things will, to many of you, be repetitive, redundant. You've heard it, so it's a reminder. And some of you, it's going to be maybe some new material, some things to ponder. So I just hope that you do that, but just make sure that whatever you want to believe or take away from this talk is between you and the doorpost, or you and whoever else, all right? So I like to assimilate the word perspective with like what Tyler's talked about. He used the word lens, and I also heard him say reality. So I like to use those two words as we talk about perspective. And I also assimilate it with truth. We all have different perspectives or lenses in which we perceive reality, right? I mean, heck, there's 8 billion people out there, and so there's lots of different perspectives. Would you agree that with 8 billion perspectives, they can't all be right? I think so. And with those perspectives, I would say your perspective becomes your reality, right? And that reality becomes your truth. So the way you think and perceive things becomes your truth. Don't we all like to know the truth in different matters of life? So I love, we're going to be talking about the Bible a little bit. I just love the stories that it has. I'm going to start with this story. I love this story in regards to truth, regarding an exchange of words between Jesus Christ and Governor Pilate. And this is just as Jesus has been arrested, and the people have already said, crucify this guy, we don't want him. And so Pilate is having, in the back room with Jesus, he goes, so you are a king, huh? And Jesus answers him and says, you say correctly that I am a king. And then Jesus follows up with this. He says, for this reason I have been born, and this reason I have come into the world. And then his answer is interesting. For this reason I was born, and for this reason I came into the world, to testify to the truth. And then Pilate follows up with Jesus' remark and asks the question, what is truth? And what's really interesting after that is Pilate asks the question, what is truth? And then actually walks away before Jesus can answer the question. So if you think about it, Pilate asked the most important question in life to the greatest authority on the subject, what is truth? And then he walks away before the answer is given. So I ask you all the question, what is truth? We want to know it, so what is it? And what do you think Jesus' answer would have been on what is truth? That's a rhetorical question. Just spend a minute thinking. What would Jesus say to the answer or the question, what is truth? And I think he didn't get an answer, but I think this is what his answer would have been. Truth is reality in which the way God perceives it. Does that make sense? Right, because we're talking about perspective. We all have a million different perspectives, and our perspective becomes our truth. Well, man, if we're going to ask the greatest authority, I think truth would be God's perspective on a certain topic or matter. Right? We don't think or act like God. That's the problem with us and God. I like the verse that says, as far as the heavens are above the earth, are my ways above your ways, and my thoughts above your thoughts. So God tells us, man, I don't think like you, I don't act like you, and your ways are definitely not my ways. So the question is, how do we get it? How do we get his perspective? Well, we get it through what I have discovered after the past 24 years is we get it through what the Bible is. Because God says that's his perspective on reality and everything else. So this is kind of what I want to share with you today, is God's perspective on mankind. And I've kind of torn it down to 5. We're going to go over 5 perspectives. It's going to take 5 minutes, 1 minute per perspective. And these are just some things that I wanted to talk about regarding God's perspective that might, again, be redundant and repetitive and a reminder for many, and it might be new thoughts for some. Perspective number 1, God actually wants you to be a success. He wants every one of us to be a success. So I love the verse, Jeremiah 9. I'm going to follow up each perspective with a verse that backs up my point. Jeremiah 9, 23, 24 says, gives us 3 reasons of which people find success in, and then it gives us the reason for which God finds success in. This is the verse. Let not a rich man boast of his riches, let not a mighty man boast of his might, and let not a wise man boast of his wisdom, but let him who boasts boast in this, right? So let him who wants to find success in this. And Jeremiah then says, that he knows and understands that I am the Lord, who exercises loving kindness, justice, and righteousness in the land. For I delight in these things, declares the Lord. So the world finds success in boasting in, it told us, money, knowledge, and power. And God says, well, that's not where I find success, but that's where our world finds success, right? We talk about power, money, and control. Power, money, and knowledge. God says, nope. Where you're going to find success and where you can boast in is knowing and understand who I am and why I do what I do. That's what God says on the subject. It's kind of cool. He backs it up with another verse, John 17:3. He says, this is Jesus speaking. This is eternal life. He defines what eternal life is, that you may know me, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom I have sent. So there's another verse that says, finding God and knowing who he is success. It's actually how you find eternal life. So that's perspective number one. God wants us to be a success. Perspective number two, God wants us to prosper in life. Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. It's plans to prosper you and not to harm you, and plans to give you a hope and a future. So God wants us to prosper. Okay? Perspective number three goes a different way for mankind. We've all heard that mankind, right, is basically good. I think, is that Marcus Aurelius said that? Who said that? My stepmom used to call me Marcus Aurelius, and I didn't know who he was and why she called me that. I like it better now.
Right.
But so man's perspective on ourselves is that we're pretty good people, right? We got lots to pat ourselves in the back about. But this is God's perspective on us. And he tells us what it is in Romans 3:10. There is no one righteous. There's not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks for God. They have all turned aside, and together they become corrupt. There's no one who does good. There's not even one. So man likes to think that we're basically good, but God's perspective on man is that we ain't good. We're bad. We can do good things, but we're bad. All right, moving to perspective number 4. That's the bad news, is that man is not good. But perspective number 4 from God's viewpoint is he provided a way to change that. And that's found in 1 Timothy 2:5. And that says that God is on the one side and all the other people on the other side. And Jesus Christ himself is between them to bring them together. And Jesus said in John 14:6 that I am the only way, the truth, and the life, and nobody gets to come to God the Father but through me. So God, in God's perspective, says that if you want a relationship with God, you have to go through Jesus Christ. And right, man, I would say what I've learned over the past 25 years is man wants to get to God between just he and him, right? When we talk about God, I found nobody has a problem talking about God. We love talking about God. Everyone talks about God. But when you throw this guy, Jesus Christ, in the middle of it, people get squirmy. And I understand. I was very squirmy my entire life until I finally came to terms that I can't get around this guy. I got to go through him. So 24 years ago on Halloween night, I kept trying to go, I stopped going around him and went through him. And that's where my perspective changed. So, that's awesome. Bad news is we're bad. The good news is that Christ provided a way. That brings us to perspective number 5. So God tells us in his perspective how we can come into a right relationship with him. Because he says we're all born separated. We're not good. We don't look after him. We don't search for him. But there's a way that we can get to him. And he says this in Romans 10:9, which is probably the first verse I memorized 24 years ago. And that's, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. How easy is that? All I got to do is confess Jesus is Lord and believe that God raised him from the dead, and I'm saved. That's God's perspective on the matter. So he says you can have eternal life in me through Christ. And that has been a great gift in my life. Justin, we must have two different tutors when it comes to how many thoughts a day we have. Justin said 70,000. My research shows 30,000. But hey, so it's somewhere in between 30,000 and 70,000. Let's do a clicker one day. What's that?
Not all brains are the same.
Yeah, I'm pretty simple-minded, so I believe that. But the main the point I want to make is whether it's 30 or 70, it's a lot. If you take 30,000 and take it 80 years out, which is what humans are living these days, it's nearly 1 billion thoughts. That's a lot of thoughts. With Justin's figure, it's 2 billion thoughts. Dang, that would make me tired every day. So the point is, we think a lot, and there's a lot of decisions and thoughts that go through our minds, and probably a lot of them that aren't good. But few decisions in a lifetime, whether it be 1 or 2 billion, have as much eternal purpose as who you say Jesus Christ is. So that's what I want to talk about. Because God says if you don't have him when you die, then you don't have anything. So my hope and prayer is that I'm not telling you what to do. Again, I can't. That's between you and whoever you call your higher being. But I just maybe would say maybe try and get into the Word, and maybe if you're a cynic or a skeptic, open the Word and let it speak to yourself, and you come up with your own answers. Because I hope and pray that you don't just not open it and seek it out and just say it's not for me, but maybe just be open-minded to it and try it. My hope is that you ponder these perspectives of God and make a decision to move forward on what he's asking you to do. Yeah, like I said, I made that decision 24 years ago, and that was my watershed moment for sure, which is, really remember what the term watershed means? Who knows the definition by heart? Dan?
The way I always known it is it's a turning point in life that you can't come back to where you came from. Something along those lines.
Defining point in time.
Close. A defining point in...
30,000 thoughts, 70,000 thoughts, there's a difference.
So like Craig dreamed about and prayed about getting a name for this company, and he came back to me and he said it's Watershed, and I'm like, okay, what does that mean? I kind of knew what it meant, but it's a defining point in time where a different course of action is taken. And so that's what I did 24 years ago. It was a watershed moment in my life. I just started thinking about life and pondering it and had lots of questions, and my perspective back then was super skewed. I just was young and dumb, and I thought selfishly, and I wanted the world, and I wanted to be rich, and I liked to get drunk, and I liked to do cocaine. I was a mess. But that led to nowhere, and so I got before God on Halloween night, 10:30, left the bar, got to my house, and I just started thinking and pondering life. And I had been raised on going to church, but I had forsaken it for 10 years now, between the ages of, a little less than 10 years, between the ages of 18 and 26. And I just made the decision that, man, my way's not working, so I'm going to take a crapshoot. I got nothing to lose because I got nothing now. My life's nothing. I'm going to take a crapshoot and try a different way. And so I started reading the Bible and just doing what it said. And that has been an absolute game changer in my life for the past 24 years. I just now give my life to at least being able to share the message of what God did in my life when I was 26 years old. So I'm doing that. And so I appreciate you allowing me to do that and not walking out. It's much appreciated, because that's really the platform for which I love about this company. Is car washing is great, but people are way greater and way more valuable, and they last forever. And that's why I want to give my life to things that last into eternity. Thanks for letting me share. Let's go have some fun.
All right, everybody, welcome back. For those who don't know, my name's Tyler. I just want to say thank you guys for giving us your time. Like they said, a lot of driving, and obviously perspective is important. Company's paying 30 of us to be here and dive into it. So I'm going to give you guys my perspective on perspective. And it's going to be really kind of business focused, and the main purpose of my conversation is to help us relate to the CSR's perspective to us. And so We'll start with, what does perspective mean? Okay, we've heard the Webster definition, but in layman's term, it's the way we see and understand the world around us, you know? And your perspective is built on your mindset, which that is grown by, you know, the ups and downs, the joys, just life experience that you guys have, or we have, helps build what our mindset is and how we see things. But as Sarah mentioned, you know, we get to choose how we see these experiences in our life. The same thing can happen to two people. The same experience that Sarah just had could happen to another woman who maybe didn't have the same support system or didn't have the same willpower, and the second choice that she mentioned could have been that person's life, you know, where you don't fight hard and you don't move forward. But really what I wanted to emphasize is, like, perspective is a choice. Your mindset is a choice, and you can change it. So a result of our perception is a result of the lens we wear. Has anybody heard that term before, like a lens, filtering yourself through a lens? Some of us who have been in any of our Bible studies have heard, you know, filtering through the lens of the eternal. And what I'm going to be focusing on is filtering through the lens of positivity versus negativity. You know, money struggles, when we're doing bad, or at least for myself, when I'm not doing good financially, or if I'm not feeling confident in myself for weight reasons or whatever it may be, the days just seem to be worse. You know, traffic is worse. People are bigger jerks. My orders tend to be wrong when I order them, and just snow piles, and then my attitude changes and everything switches. And some of us might think that that just happens, you know. My life is bad and I can't change it and I'm just unlucky. You know, we've all met those people, and it's sad when we have them as employees, and especially if you're a positive individual trying to just like, no, you got it, you know, snap out of it. You snap out of it and things will change. Sometimes it's harder than it looks. It takes a lot to change your perspective, you know, it's not permanent. To change your perspective, it does take effort and a shift in mindset, or a changing of the lens. Really kind of what I wanted to say is, so Watershed, you know, we each have personal perspectives, but while we're at work, we are given a guideline of how we should see all the things under this umbrella of Watershed. Anybody got a guess of what that guideline is? What's our rock as a business, as a company? Serving people. We have a vision. We've got values. We've got concepts. We have a standard that we can filter life's perceptions through. Let's take that angry customer. Most of us, on a bad day, with our own personal perspectives out there, why are you crying to me, sir? You're the one who should check your bill statements. I don't know why you're upset that it charged you. We gave you everything you need. But I'm not filtering through my perspective of serving people. I've had a lot of perspective changes with this company. I'm going to go into some personal things, and one of my stories happened right here at Mark's house, before it was Mark's house. When I first took this job, I was I was working in sales, and, you know, dog-eat-dog world, I loved it. I was able to use my vocal skills and really make a lot of money and think I was big, but that type of world was first to the door, sucks for you, that type of attitude, and it really kind of fosters a very prideful individual. When I took this job, as we all had in our interviews, opportunity, you can do this, you can do this. We create positions for people. We have salesmen making $180,000 a year. All you have to do is smile and wave. And I was just so boggled by all the things and all the pitches, and I was just eager, and not humble at all. And so I was lucky enough to be hired in as an MIT with this company. The longer I've been here, the more I've realized how much of a blessing that was. But I've got a lot of chance to spend with different people. So, first story. Got invited to go to lunch, first time with the owners, never been in a company where I got to speak with owners or see them or get to hear their perspective. And if there was, it was always like, hey, hello, bye, you know, if someone passed through. So to get invited to lunch, it was near my birthday. I think H was there, Mark was there, Grondin was there, maybe Ever, I can't speak for, honestly, I don't remember all those, but I remember who gave me a gut punch, Mr. Grondin, if anybody's had a moment with him. You might not remember this, but I remember this. So I was just being braggadocious, you know what I mean? Like, I can do this, everybody, they're just asking me questions like normal people do. Well, what are you interested in? What are you happy about? And I just was selling my butt off about why I should be your next whatever, you know? And Grondin hit me with, hey, how do you like your feedback? You know, like right down the middle, you like it kind of fluffed up? Just out of nowhere, just asked me, and I was like, oh, right down the middle, no room for misinterpretation. You know, I don't want to have any mistakes. Okay, cool. You just try to be a little more humble. You should try that out on yourself. It hit me so hard. Like, I don't usually get checked, you know. I find myself to be a confident individual, but to have just have a high-level individual check me like that, caught me off guard. 10 seconds later, not even, was, all right, let's go get some lunch. You want some barbecue? Let's go eat. Right to the next step. And it sat with me. And personal experience, I could have taken that one way of like, dang, I really blew this. Because that's how I felt. I was like, oh, these guys think I'm just some peacock over here showing my feathers. And prove that it's not that way, you know. They really admire and listen to what you have to say, and they put power into your words. So that was my first perspective change of like, it's not always the loudest speaker in a room that gets everything, you know. Of course, squeaky wheel gets the grease, but it's all about how you bring these things to people's attention. So that was my first perspective switch. Second one involves Mr. Golden, wherever he be, way back there, him and Matthew Goss. So Matthew Goss was the wonderful individual tasked with my training with MIT. Who here knows Matthew Goss on an actual level? Okay. Okay. I came from a world where it was business, this, that. Didn't understand, straight up, I'll be real. I love this guy to death right now, so I can say this confidently. I had no idea why he had this position at the time. But then throughout things and learning, because I was so strict with things and how I wanted to go, but this guy's heart was the size of Wisconsin. You know, it was the biggest thing in the world, and he cared for everybody on his team. And Dan was my MIT trainer. He comes in, he talks with you, we go over cultures and concepts, and just kind of does a pulse check. I felt myself in a complaining mood one day of like, dude, how are you guys having this guy teach what I just was a rude jerk, honestly, man. And Dan paused, he listened to me, let me get it out. And he goes, have you ever heard of lead from below? It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. You know, he's getting paid the money to be the leader. Why would I try to assume a role that's not mine? Because I've always been the guy that's like, if I don't like what they're doing, do it better, take their job. That's just how business has always worked for me. Not in this business. They took the side of the person I was, in my head, not able to align with. And with that simple thing, hey, help him. Be a silent helper. Hit these areas that but you need to realize there is something to learn from this person. And there was. And I learned what the company values most. We say it in our interviews, culture over skill set. You can be the Taylor Stanley of sales, but if you're not fun to work with, you're not gonna make it through here if you're not able to adjust and change. So thank you, Matt, for being you always and spreading your joy when you can. So that was my second perspective change with how this company works. And I guess the next thing I'm gonna move on to, sorry I'm jumping on here, I kind of went out of order, but back to work's perspective. Using our serving people, when you actually understand what it is, using that to filter your perspectives. I had a diagram I was gonna draw, but I think I can explain it very well. We all know what our career plan looks like. What position's at the top under the owner? Regional manager. Underneath that, we have district managers, general managers, site managers, assistants, and then CSRs. The perspective at each position is different, and you have to be able to adjust and put yourself in those shoes. We've all been a CSR before, or at least had the CSR duties, and you're the ones coaching, we're the ones coaching them what to do. How dare we not remember what it was like to have to, deal with an angry customer and have to check the vacuums, and the whole thing. So we want to put ourselves in their shoes, but you also have to understand with CSRs, all they can do is compare sideways. Well, I'm only working as hard as he's working. Well, I'm not going to do it because she didn't do it. And so as managers, as we go up, our perspective, we either look up or we look down. Well, they're doing great or they're doing bad, or he's not helping or he's the best. And it keeps going. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, I think about the business in A. But I know for a fact, Justin has thought about the business in A, but he's all the way at Z by now. Doesn't mean he can't filter himself back down to our position? Yeah, but the way his daily mindset is trained is to be looking for XYZ. Why this is important is sometimes we have to bring ourselves back down. The CSRs are the ones always in the front of the customers. They always are putting their hands on the site. And it's our job to listen, filter through our knowledge and our perspective, and respond back to that. You know, sometimes they're not right, you know, but we've heard this, my perception is my reality. You know, their perspective is their reality. And it really, to a point, matters. Let me give an example. How many people have a loader station where you can see into the office? Yeah? As managers, we all know there are computer jobs. Like, we have things we have to do on our computer. We're on our phones a lot. We actually are responding to messages. We're really actually following up with other people. The person in the tunnel on a hot summer day, loading, watching you for a full hour and a half on your phone, what's their perception? Well, this guy's just, and then they come in and you're like, hey, where you at with your checklist? You just whip around in your chair with your phone in your hand still, checking somebody. Their perspective is, why is this guy my leader? Why should I listen to them? Yeah, I'll go do it. Versus when you flip it, like, yeah, we are doing that job, but you should take their perspective into consideration, maybe break those duties up. Take time away from the computer. I will go do a towel check sometimes when I'm at the site, or go outside, just to go outside. I'm not kidding, you know, because I believe saving face, like, and being an example. As leaders, we are meant to be held above reproach. And I'm about to kind of tie this up, but when we're above reproach, what does that really mean? Somebody, anybody, like, what does that mean to you? Without blame? Straight up. And do we have guidelines are our rules laid out in our business, black and white? We have a policies and procedures packet. We have safety policies. It's a lot of stuff, but we get paid the money we get paid to adhere, follow, and hold others to those guidelines. And so whatever's happening in my life outside of work, I've always found work a calming spot to be, because everything is laid out. There's no guesswork. You have a goal of what you need to do. You know where you're going. I took the job with the company because I've never seen a car wash. Number one, I worked at a car wash, but number two, the career plan is broken out all the way to Justin's level. So there's no guessing of where can I go next, how can I go, how do I get there? And that makes it easy for me to pitch and sell that dream and give my perception to the team. And I just really wanted to make sure everybody understood that perspective is not permanent. It can be changed using QBQ. We've all read this book. I use it more than not. Levi can probably attest to how much I throw that in his face. But ever since I read it, it made sense. And we're going to take it outside of what it says about, you know, how to train a team. I'm going to take it personal, flip it. Have I done everything it takes to make sure Sean knows this task? Was I nice? Was I aggressive? Did I spend time and show him because he's hands-on? Did I come in early? Did I remind him? You got to go through these checklists of things to help yourself verify with your team. Now, of course, there are times where you get through your list of 5, 10, 12 things. It's really that person. Done everything you can, but you know it by this time. But the QBQ, the biggest part about it, for me, I like to add honesty. So how do we change one's perspective, personal or team? For me, it takes honesty. You've got to be honest with yourself. If you want to self-change, if you want to self-improve, you have to analyze your decisions. You have to analyze your feelings. You know, a lot of people nowadays, maybe some in this room, we tend to bury bad feelings, bad emotions. For me, when it's money, I just turn off. I don't know why. It's always been a thing in my life, but it's an area I'm trying to work on of, like, you have to face your problems sometimes, and you have to address the problem, change your perspective on it. You know, saving is not saying no to fun. Saving is saying yes to a future. You know, that's a simple perspective change. But in the moment, when all your friends are dancing around you, saving is saying no to fun. And so, for me, it's changing that perspective, and it's an effort, just like Sarah said. It's a daily effort. Shoot, sometimes it's a moment-to-moment effort. It's a conversation-to-conversation decision of, am I going to be upset at what they said, or am I going to just let that roll off? But with honesty, like Mr. Grondin and like the Dans of the world gave me, if your team respects you enough and you've asked, or if they've welcomed a push for growth, we must give them honesty. And it's not, we've all been those people where it's like, you see the person in the tunnel loading bad, and we might just gripe to the person in the office. Gosh, I can't believe I've already tried to fix that 4 times. It's so annoying. And then they come in and you're like, hey, great job, go ahead and get towels. And the conversation dies, and then it's breeds so many worse things when it would be so much easier just to be like, hey David, don't forget, wrist below the belts and keep that smile going. Conversation over, you brought it to his attention, you put it in the notes. Next, his perception is like, okay, I guess loading's important to them, because I'm not letting up. And I'm not gonna let up on using language in the office. I'm not gonna let up on vaping or these little rules that we tend to move. You ruin your perception. The team sees you guys back off your line that you drew. Well, it must not be that important. And then we are now no longer above reproach. Well, I saw you do it. I've literally had people, we all had been there, we're like, oh, I was late yesterday, and this guy's really late, and I really need to tell him, but I know I messed up myself. So that problem disappears. For me, like I said, honesty. If they don't know, then how can they fix it? And honesty is me. I have to own up to stuff, you know? As GMs and managers, sometimes we don't get caught in check as much anymore because the team's not gonna speak up to you, or the boss isn't around enough and you're able to be 5 stars when he is, or she is. You have to welcome feedback from the team. You have to just ask those questions. Levi really started, I'm gonna bring him up, he started using his goodwill just like individual lunches. He had 3 questions he wanted to ask these people. How can I do better? Where are you trying to go? And how can I help you get there? And getting that honest feedback, and you have to do it multiple times. The first time's like, no, you're great. I love you. I don't have any questions. And the next time you have to force, no, I need something to work on for me. This would help me, please. And anyways, what I really want us to take away is honesty is needed to switch someone's perspective. You can have multiple perspectives, and it is not a permanent effect. You can continuously change and improve, and it is our choice to take good experiences and bad experiences and make them as they are. You know, everybody has a story, as we've heard, but seeing the positivities of the Sarahs and the Armandos and other people, like, we would never know the struggles and hardships they go through if they weren't brave enough to share them to us and help give their perspective of how they made it through. So just know that when you're talking with your teams, and you know, I appreciate your time and thank y'all.
Dang, good stuff, Tyler. Yeah, guys, man, I hope you're taking notes, because every person's different perspective. It's like, you know, there's these great nuggets that are coming from it. You know, Sarah trusting the process when you don't always know the outcome, right? In her personal story, her life, what felt like came crumbling down and to a crippling halt. What am I going to do? I no longer have a significant other to help me take care of the kids, and I don't have any, you know, someone to watch them, or you know, more funds. And how am I going to figure this out? Then you have Tyler. I love what you said. You know, when we bring people in during the interviews, you know, we tell them culture over skill set. That's such a simple thing to remind the people that are coming in, that even their perspective is, you know, hey, I don't know, you know, what I can do here in the company. I know I just love, you know, I like people. I'm a people person. And how he had the perspective of the person in the tunnel. Just now we're out of, Lord willing, the heat. But in 108 weather, someone's sitting there loading for an hour, hopefully, you know, 30 minutes if it's terribly hot and you're switching out. And yeah, managers in the office doing what they got to do, right? And reminding yourself to go out, check the towels, spend a couple minutes with them. Those times are what helps build that camaraderie with your teams. And then the talk of, you know, of my talk of eternal perspective and looking into what is filling that hole, right? So we have one more. Tristan is going to come up, and we have, let me see here. We have, just for you guys that are probably wondering, we have 11:30 for lunch. So we have Tristan. We're going to do a game, and we'll keep on moving. But Tristan's going to talk about her story of perseverance.
Okay, so I've never spoke in a public setting like this before, so forgive me if I mess up a little bit. But yeah, so I'm going to start. You can talk about perspective in many different ways. Today I'll be talking to you guys about how my perspective on life was influenced by others and how I'm able to persevere through it. Growing up, I didn't have the easiest or most normal childhood. My parents were drug addicts and weren't really present while I was growing up. Most kids are worried about getting that new toy or what mom's going to be making for dinner. But honestly, I was just making sure my mom was alive. So, growing up, I just remember like I wouldn't be able to sit in my room for longer than an hour at a time without going and checking on my mom. So I was super not normal as a kid. I had a lot of anxiety. I was always making sure that everybody else was okay. I didn't think about normal kid things, unfortunately. But as I was growing up, I noticed how my parents always used excuses to justify their actions or the way that they were living, which only dug them deeper and deeper into an unhealthy perspective. So for a long time, I fell into that same perspective. I've never been around so negative people in my life before. I'm not really a family person for that reason. I didn't really even like being around adults either because my mom changed my perspective on adults in general. I thought all older people were negative or were going to lecture me about something. So I was terrified to be around older people. I just wanted to be around kids all the time. I guess kind of to fill that void that I didn't really have very much. Sorry, I lost. Yeah, so for a long time I fell into that same perspective. I thought, well, I'm already at the bottom, so there's no hope in growing or getting better. Feeling that way as a child and going into my adulthood, it was extremely draining. I always got that thought in my head, what's the point? I was never really surrounded by positivity growing up, unless I was with friends or at church, which was a really great opportunity that I got as growing up with some of the friends that I had, as a lot of them went to church, so I would go with their family, and that was just kind of like my escape. Being with my other friends and their families, I kind of got to see how normal it was, so I was never home. Not that it was very enjoyable for me to be at home, so I would just always be gone. Yeah, but I always just thought these guys are crazy and none of that's true. There is no better life. A lot of families continue the pattern or lifestyle throughout the generations, and this is because our parents have a significant impact on our perspective on life. They shape our values, our beliefs, our attitudes through their guidance, experiences, and teachings. The way they navigate challenges, make decisions, and handle relationships all contribute to shaping our approach to life. Ultimately, their influence helps mold our character and guides us in determining our goals and priorities. My parents had an unhealthy perspective on life, and I decided to break that pattern. We got asked the question, where were you at mentally before you found your healthy perspective? And my answer is that I had a victim mentality. I always had the mindset that everyone was out to get me and everyone is hateful. And anytime something bad happened or didn't go my way, I'd always ask the wrong questions. I would get so worked up and I was always full of anger, and I'm sure all of you can imagine that's extremely draining to be that way. Another question that we got asked is, what helped shape you? As I stayed in that perspective, I noticed that I was always unhappy, and it'll only get harder this way, as I experienced that with my parents. I was bouncing between jobs like crazy, whether it was me quitting for a childish reason or me losing my job due to bad mistakes with drugs or carelessness, realizing something needs to change. When I started at Watershed, that's when everything changed for me. My manager at the time was Craig Thesey. Sorry. This man was not afraid to tell you the truth. Anytime I started asking the incorrect questions, or going into my victim mentality, he would call me out. And not always in a nice way, but it's kind of what I needed. And that helped me out so much. A lot of the time I didn't even notice it was happening. I just thought it was normal. And he showed me that it wasn't, and that I can't live that way. Sometimes it hurts to hear the truth or to get criticism, but it is truly a blessing. You can either grow from it or you can fall right back into that unhealthy perspective. As stated in QBQ, a victim blames and complains. Someone who is not a victim takes action and responsibility. In other words, personal accountability. The last question that I was asked is, what do you do to keep your perspective? I truly do believe this answer is different for everybody. Personally, what works for me is asking myself the correct questions. It's something that I do every single day. Anytime that I start feeling any type of negative thoughts or any bad feelings, I always start to ask myself those correct questions. It is easy to start feeling bad for yourself or start making excuses. Perspective is kind of like attitude in a way. It is a choice. You can choose to have an unhealthy perspective or a healthy perspective. Like 5S, sustaining the healthy perspective is the hardest part. Trust me, it is not easy for anybody to change from unhealthy perspective to a healthy perspective, regardless of what you're going through with past experiences or current. I've used my past experiences to help me with my future, and that you get nowhere being a victim. Absolutely nowhere. If anything, you just go deeper and deeper. So I have adopted no excuses. People that have worked with me or people at my sites, they know that that's one of my biggest things. There's just no excuses. Everything that happens for a reason, and typically it's due to your own actions. Yes, of course, we are a victim of other people's actions, but again, how Sarah was saying is you have the choice to how you perceive that or how you your perspective on it. So I want to encourage people that surround me to have a perspective and to keep pushing, or to have a healthy perspective. Mine was not near as long as everybody else's, but that's all I have for you guys.
See, there we go. Comparing yourself to others. You had a great talk. You're amazing, Tristan. Amazing. Thank you for your vulnerability and for sharing your perspective. Having grown up that way when we were talking yesterday, our childhoods were completely different. And you know, your history is special, and it's molded you into this person that's being able to achieve great things. So, great job. All right. We probably need about 5 minutes or so. We're gonna go ahead and set up a minute to win it game, I guess is what it is. And we'll go ahead and let you know once we're ready to start. So take a 10-minute break.
We kind of get groups, right? Groups of 5, I think. 5.
Yeah, I guess we didn't think that. Okay, all
Yeah, sorry, hold on. Hey guys, sorry, change of plans. Just stay in your tables as your group. And you guys will be fine. Sorry, Justin, Isaiah, Jonathan, you guys got this. Please make room in the middle of your tables.
I thought you were whistling. I was like, dude, you got their attention.
Go smooth, so it's pretty special. So thanks, and thank you guys for the owners too being generous to put these kind of things on. It breaks up the day-to-day, going in, opening sites, and growing these things. So it's special. So cool. All right, mindset. You guys ready for it? Yeah. Have you prepared your minds? So we've heard like a common thread, right? It's perspective, right? I've been hearing a lot of things kind of going through of like it's mindset. It's kind of how you think about things. I heard a lot of like you get to choose during certain situations in your life, and so it's everything's flowing together. It's pretty good. So for you guys, so as leaders, I'm gonna keep saying to you guys. I hope you don't mind. As leaders, perspective is super important. You know, because there's things that go well, and you have to have a certain kind of perspective, and then there's things that don't go so well, and you have to have another type of perspective, and you really get to choose what you want. And so, being a leader, it's rewarding. It can be fun, or it is fun. It can be challenging. You know, sometimes, like for instance, say you're problem solving something in the tunnel, or to me, I love that. It's like challenging, like troubleshooting. Like, what do I get to learn today? It could be helping someone with their budget, someone on your team, or someone's boyfriend or girlfriend might have broke up with them, and you're kind of helping them walk through life, and you're like, it's okay, I know it seems like the end of the world, but I've been through it, you will live. Sometimes it's exhausting, right? Like sometimes last night, Waco, y'all were up till midnight last night and got up at 4 o'clock this morning to come down here, so thank you. Like, that's a big deal. Good job. And John had no idea he was going to get roped into that, but it's good. Thanks for coming down. It's part of being a leader. So one of my favorite qualities of a leader is steadiness. And it's being rock steady through those times. Because you don't know, it could be good, it could be bad. Your site could, be growing, and you're like, hey guys, let's go out. Mark's taking us out for a steak dinner. We hit this 100,000 recharge goal that we've been pushing towards. Or hey, we got to have a meeting. The numbers are dropping. And can you remain steady in those hard times, right? You have to have this unnatural perspective. It doesn't come natural to be steady when things are falling apart, right? When the tunnel goes down and you have customers yelling at you, and you have to stand there and go, man, I'm really sorry. I'm empathetic, even when you know someone may have put it in drive and ran into the back of another car, right? You have to have this. It's an unnatural thing to sit there and be really calm. When you really inside, you want to yell back. Like there could be times like that, right? And so you have to choose to have this perspective of, I'm going to take this on. One of my favorite stories, I just wanted to share it, but you guys don't know how good you have it. Because back when I was a manager, back when I was your age, we used to do, we had 5 sites when I first became a manager. I think most of you guys know my story, but came in from the restaurant industry to help manage a car wash. It was the number 5 location. And when a site would go down, imagine this, you have Mark, Craig, Grondin, Trevor wouldn't really get involved. So you have 3 owners and 5 sites. So if a site went down, like they were on you. And I remember there was one site, our backflow preventer went out, and we were just waiting on a plumber. And I remember Mark just texting, where are we? Where's this plumber? How long is this gonna take? And it was like, probably every 10 minutes there was a text like, this is taking way too, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, but like, I'm sorry. And I'm just, the poor plumber too, I was probably just calling him every 10 minutes. The owner's like pissed off right now. But like, it's crazy. So I had, I had to have this, there was kind of this chaos, and you have customers as part of this. You have, oh my gosh, like we're shut down, so hand out these free tickets, and now closing shifts coming in, and what do I do? I've never dealt with all these things, and these owners keep texting me, and the plumber's not calling me back. It was crazy. But through those times, you learn you have to be steady. You have to be rock steady and have the answers. And I guess you don't always have to have the answers, but just be willing to kind of work through those. So you have to be calm, right? There was a time early on I learned a lot with one of those first sites. I remember there was a customer who we later found out he had front wheel pull. He was loaded incorrectly, came off the track. They ran right into the mitters. And this dude, he must have been he was like roid raging or something. He looked like he just got out of the gym, like Vince in his younger days. And and this guy, like literally, he got out of the car, and with the blowers going, like soap everywhere. He's yelling at me. Like I could see the veins in his neck and his forehead. And I'm like, sir, get back in your car. And there was just something that, just I had to choose to be like steady in that. I couldn't say, dude, you turned your wheel. Like, cause that's what we thought it was at first, but you have to keep your cool, right? There's times where you'll have to step in if you have employees that aren't agreeing with each other. You got to step in and say, okay, guys, this is my job to be the leader. This is an unnatural thing for most people, I think, to step in between that and to take the fire from the angry customer, from the owners that are texting, from the employees that aren't getting along. You have to choose that type of a perspective. It's weird, right? So what do you do if you're, like most of us, I think a majority, this doesn't come natural? How do you choose that? How do you obtain this kind of perspective, right? So that's the question. So I'm glad you asked. Last week, it's funny, we did this conference a week ago in San Antonio, and the theme of the whole thing was very similar. It was all about ownership. It was all about owning it. And taking ownership is kind of a similar thing where it's a form of changing your perspective. You guys know, like we talk about when you as leaders, you get to your sites, as you're walking around to have owner's eyes, right? Step up and take ownership. It's really to kind of see things through a different lens than maybe a CSR. If you have a high schooler that's a CSR, they're going to see things through a different lens than an owner who has $6 million of their own money invested into the site to get this thing up and running, right? Like you're going to see a piece of trash as an owner, you're going to pick that up, right? If there's a clogged vacuum nozzle, you're going to unclog it. But a CSR from who's in high school, they really don't have as much skin in the game. They're not going to care as much, and so we want you guys to have that type of perspective, the mindset, like act like you're the owner, step up and kind of take care of that. So we talked a lot about that last week. I think it's good. So a big part of that as well was kind of taking ownership. Take ownership if your site's not growing or if things aren't good, right? Or give it away when the praise comes and say, hey, this was all the team. Have the humility to do that. That's a big mindset shift because that doesn't come natural. When people praise us, we want to go, oh, thanks, yeah. Actually put in long, late hours and early mornings, and but instead give it away to the team. And then another big one, we can talk about more. I know we're short on time, but is to love your team enough to give them discipline, to help correct them, help them change. Maybe it's changing their perspective, changing their mindset. It's a big one. So what happens if we don't take ownership? What happens if we don't change our perspectives and our mindset? And I think what happens is the team will begin to walk all over you because you're afraid to discipline or reprimand. The culture crumbles, right? Because we may hold one person accountable because they're easy to talk to and correct, but this person's hard, so we're not going to correct them. There might be pushback on the systems. People might quit. Sites fail. You lose your job. So it's a big deal to be taking ownership and have this kind of perspective. I think even when it comes to your personal life, are you stepping up? Are you taking ownership in that? How's your perspective toward yourself? We talked a lot about that. A lot of you guys with speakers and sharing your own stories and to step up and have a perspective change, right? You can have one of two perspectives. It's either everything's against me or I can look at this a different way and see the good in that, right? Yeah, what's your perspective towards yourself? What's your perspective towards other people? Those are big questions to ask yourself. Is it healthy? Is it where you want it to be? So if not, how do you change that perspective? And I think to answer that question, it first starts with mindset. So they're two different things, right? Perspective and mindset. So a mindset, basically, it's essentially your thoughts. What are the things that you think about in your mind? And we all think, I did a Google search. We have approximately, according to Google, about 70,000 thoughts a day that your brain processes. And almost all of them are kind of this like autopilot. You don't even think about that you've been breathing this whole time I've been talking, right? Or that you're maintaining your balance, or when you're eating your food. Like there's a lot of thoughts we don't think about, or that your body's kind of doing. But there are a few things that we can control with our thoughts, and I think that's important. So are we thinking about the bad things? Are we seeing only the bad and thinking about the bad? Are we thinking about the good things? Do we think about the future and kind of what we're hoping for, what we're working towards? Are we thinking about the past? Are we regretting? Are we stuck in the past? Sometimes that can stop us, right? Like hopes, regrets, those are big. There was a study I really liked. There was a lady by the name, she's a doctor actually, so Dr. Carol Dweck, and she did this study for the last 30 years and has gone over the mindset of people. And she started with kindergartners and found that essentially people, you can group them even from kindergartners and on up, and they followed them for years and years, but there's two different kind of categories generally that people can be fit in. And what they did was one of the studies they gave to these kindergartners was this puzzle. And it was this super difficult, hard puzzle. And essentially part of the kindergartners were they took it in, they were like, oh, this is impossible. I'm never gonna get this. And they didn't get it. And they said that this was a fixed type of a mindset. The other group of these kindergartners, they looked at it and they're like, oh my gosh, this looks challenging and fun. This looks like something that is new to learn and I'm excited for it. And so you have this one group that was fixed and this one group that had this growth mindset that I can learn from things that I can be challenged by. And so I think I really love this idea because we can kind of have, we take this with us, I think, as we get into adults. And so you have this fixed mindset where you have people that they believe that their abilities and intelligence are static traits. They're something that you're either born with my intelligence or I'm not. Whereas people with this growth mindset believe, hey, my abilities and intelligence is something that can be developed and improved on through learning and effort, training, perseverance. Fixed mindsets, they tend to avoid challenges because they fear failure. That's a big one, right? I think to some degree all of us fear failure, but how can we get over that? And so if that stunts their growth because they're avoiding the things that challenge them and grow them, with the growth mindset, they embrace challenges on the flip side. They see it as an opportunity to learn and grow. Fixed mindsets on the side, their efforts seen as fruitless, since when they believe they either have the talent or they don't. I can do this or I can't. It's inherent, right? Where the other side, the growth mindset, the effort is viewed as a path to mastery. What I'm trying to do, I'm gonna fail, but I'm going to eventually master it, and that's okay. And setbacks are seen as valuable learning experiences. I just love it. Fixed mindsets, I'll go through these real fast, but they often give up when they're faced with obstacles. Feedback and criticism are taken personally, and they're often seen as threats to their self-esteem. And then the growth mindset on the other side, feedback and criticism are seen as valuable tools to get better for improvement, and they're not easily discouraged by setbacks. They're more likely to reach their full potential and achieve higher levels of success. So it's kind of, which group do you want to be part of? It's a no-brainer, right? And so part of it is that you're not set in life in one or the other. It's that sometimes you can be in one or the other. You can work from one towards the other through training your mind. So it's all about your perspective, right? And so how do you change your mindset in that? How do you go, if you are in this fixed mindset group, how do I go into this growth mindset? And I think the first one is your will. Is we have a will that all of us have a will. One definition I found that I really like for a will, because what is a will? I'm like, oh, it's a will. I will it, and I'm gonna put my foot down and put my flag on the ground. One definition I found that I like for this is human will refers to the human capacity to actively decide what to do instead of reacting automatically to stimuli. So it refers to the human capacity, I'm going to actively decide what I'm going to do instead of just automatically reacting to something that's external from me. And I love it. It's this very, very intentional thought of that, hey, when the tunnel goes down, I'm going to have patience. I'm going to be prepared what to do now so that when the time comes, I'm going to be ready for it. Hey, when I fail and someone doesn't know how to load and a tenant gets ripped off, what am I going to do about that? I'm not, I can't fear the failure to the point that it cripples me. I'm going to look forward to the opportunity and see that as an opportunity to learn. So I love it. So it is, how can we do that without just reacting automatically to that stimuli? So The things that are external are going to happen. If I don't will something, it's just going to go automatic. It's like this autopilot. I'm just going to react. So you have two types of thinking. So, in your mind, of those 70,000 thoughts a day, there's two. And the main type is autopilot. That accounts for almost all of those thoughts. But then you have active thoughts and actively decide. You can actively choose your will ahead of time. So one of my favorite things I heard, this was in a talk a long time ago, is these three lines, and I put it in place in my own life. And I want you guys to write these down. It's really good. So your will controls your mind. When you think of mind, just write thoughts, right? Your will controls your mind. Your mind, or your thoughts, control your emotions. Right? It's how you feel about things. And then ultimately your emotions control your behavior. The will controls the mind, your mind controls your emotions, and your emotions control your behavior. So think about this. You don't get anxious about something until you think about it. What you're thinking or fearing, you don't think about it or you don't fear it until it comes across your mind first. And I think ultimately you fear in the direction of where your hope and emotions are. And how can you intentionally put your will to that? That's that choosing that almost all the leaders have been talking about. It's strapping yourselves up by the bootstraps, saying, I'm going to change. I'm going to will this. And ultimately, it leads to behavior. It leads to action. It's a change. It's not this external stimuli. It's not the things that are happening to me that affect me. No, I can't. My will's too strong. It's pretty amazing. So your thoughts will eventually control your behavior. Like, do you believe that? And then you can control the things that you think about, things that pop into your mind. You can take and turn them into behavior, right? So spend the time, choose what you want to be, and your mind will follow, then emotions, then behavior. One of the things I love, there's a verse in the Bible that's really helped me with this, and it's crazy how something that was written 2,000 years ago can be applicable today. But it's something I've even gone through this with, even my kids. But I need it just as much as them. But there's a verse that's in Philippians, it's 4:8-9, and it says, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's anything excellent, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And what you have learned and received and heard in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you." So what Paul is saying to this church that he's writing to, he's saying, guys, think about the good things. And ultimately, God will give you peace in them. Right? If we think about the negative, what's that going to happen? If we're thinking about the negative in our minds and having these negative mindsets, what's going to happen? You're going to be anxious. You're going to be fearful. Everything that happens to you is going to go back to this negativity, right? But if we're thinking about things that are pure and true and honorable, we're going to see things that are true and pure and honorable. It's going to change our mindset. It's going to change the way that we see the things that are happening externally, and then how we live our lives, how we behave. So that's my challenge to you guys. Choose it. That's all I got.
Yeah.
I know that guy. What's up, Watershed? All right, so just a little introduction, because I know some of y'all don't know me super well yet. Kind of running through a little bit of my story. For me, I did not have a really super normal growing up as a kid. I grew up during the Great Recession. My dad was not personally good at dealing with any kind of stress or anything. It made so he wasn't a great example for me growing up. My dad was, on drugs for a little bit. When I got into my teenage years and I started going to high school, he went to jail. He was in jail all the way through my adolescence. Only other real male role models I had were my older brothers. One of them was pretty much absent. My oldest brother, James, just used to make fun of me relentlessly all the way through growing up. Made my life live in hell. Like, I'm talking every single thing I did was criticized. Every single moment was a failure for me. It made so every single thing I did was painted to me like I was a failure. I am a problem. I am not interesting or in any way kind of a good person. And it's one of those things where it's like at the time, it was just kind of like, oh, no, I'm upset, I'm dealing with my brother. But in hindsight, it's like I kind of look back and I realize what kind of a hole that left in me, you know? It made it so, in hindsight, it just destroyed my self-confidence. I got into the adult world when I was probably like 16, you know, started hanging out with friends and stuff like that, and I realized that I didn't like who I was. And it's like I had kind of let the world talk me into hating who I was. And it made so when I got into my teenage years, only thing I could try to do to try to fit in, to try to make myself feel better about myself, was to try to make up a new me. It was to hide behind a persona in a way, you know? I had to, instead of trying to be me, because I wasn't cool, I had to try to be cool. I had to figure out some way to make myself cool. So for me, it got into getting involved with rock and roll music, because I loved the whole scene of it. It was so, you know, it was so cool to like watch all these concerts, you know, all these rock stars and interviews, and they're getting all these girls, and they're always having a great time, and every time you hear interviews with them, they're telling these stories about how much fun they're having, and it made so I started idolizing them. So when I was a teenager, kind of my idols ended up being based around people like Billy Idol, you know, and Led Zeppelin, and all these rock stars. But what I didn't realize at the time was I wasn't being careful about what I was letting in. Basically, because I was idolizing these people, I was idolizing every factor of their behavior. And it made it so I started idolizing things like doing drugs. I started idolizing things like, you know, being against authority. You know, you watch interviews with these guys, you know, looking at like Billy Idol, for example, and there's a story, and I thought it was so cool the first time I heard it, about how he threw this crazy party when he was in the Philippines sometime, and the Philippine National Guard had to come and remove him from the hotel because he was just, you know, like that's a problem, you know, but it's like, I thought that was so cool at the time. But it's like, looking back, that's not cool. That guy's just not a good person, you know? I was idolizing the wrong people. Kind of for me, the wake-up call for me was, there was a point in my life, probably when I was like 17 years old, where I started trying to want to be a better person. I realized I wasn't happy. I've never been happy. I'm just kind of filling my life with drugs and things that don't mean anything. It was just all what it was me trying to hold myself together with this false identity in drugs. It's the only thing keeping me happy and the only thing keeping me going. And I realized that I'm like, I have to change something because I can't live like this forever. Everything that I'm doing isn't making me happy, it's making my life worse and worse and worse. So I started trying to change my life a little bit, and what ended up happening was all of the people who were my friends at the time lost interest in me. And it's like I was alone all of a sudden. I didn't have any friends left. I, you know, didn't have, again, this whole time my dad's in jail, I don't have any role models or anything, so I've kind of left alone. And I kind of realized like those people weren't really my friends. They were kind of just taking advantage of me in the long run. So it kind of got me to a point where I'm like, well, I'm at this point now where I don't know who I want to be. I want to be a good person, but I don't know what being a good person is. My concept of what a good person is it was so destroyed at this point that I didn't know who to look up to. I didn't have any image to compare it to. At the time, I was in college, I was pursuing a degree in physics, and I was taking a minor in philosophy. I started getting really into philosophy. I started dedicating a large amount of my time into just reading philosophy books, like, you know, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, you know, or Carl Jung's Psychology, and just kind of reading all this stuff. And to me, I kind of realized early on, I'm like, this can help me figure out how to be a good person. This can help me figure out what I want to be. So to me, I kind of looked for my role models there. I didn't really have any person in my life that I could point to as a role model, so I started getting into philosophy as a role model. So the two big philosophers I kind of want to talk about with y'all today would be Marcus Aurelius and Carl Jung. Those were two of my all-time favorite men. In my opinion, they taught me how to be a man. And to me, that's always be special to me, because like if they wrote something so powerful that I can read it 5,000 years later and it can teach me how to be a man, you know? Like, to kind of introduce Marcus Aurelius to you a little bit. Marcus Aurelius was Roman emperor for, I think, 20 years, I believe. He kind of had the same setup that Caesar did, where, you know, they handed over total power to him for a couple of situations where they needed one person to be in charge. It couldn't be a democratic decision because they needed a decision made right now. So they gave Marcus Aurelius full power 3 separate times in his career, and all 3 times he gave power back when he's done. He didn't hold on to it to get greedy. He was a man that was in a situation where he could have anything he'd ever want. Most Roman emperors lead these hedonistic lifestyles, but Marcus Aurelius didn't do that. He was not interested in wealth. He was not interested in any of this kind of stuff. He was just interested in stuff that's real. Because what he talks about, and the reason we know he's a good person beyond just like how he acts towards the public, but how he acts internally, is his book. So his book, Meditations, that I read, at the preface, rereading it this time, there was a piece that I had kind of missed last time, where Marcus Aurelius apparently never read wrote the book to be released publicly like as a philosophical form. He wrote the book as a journal. The book was Marcus Aurelius' own personal journey to being a better person and being a better man. And the fact that this guy just thought and spent all of his time thinking about this, I'm like, that's the trick right there. So you have to be able to actually think about what you need to do to get better. So Marcus Aurelius defines how to become a better person through self-awareness. He defines it in kind of 3 sections. You have your shadow, the shadow of yourself, which are the things in you that you don't want to be, the things in you that you're wanting to remove and train out of yourself. You have a present self, which is who you are right now, and you have an ideal self, which is the traits that you want to possess. Marcus Aurelius had this really important viewpoint where he talks about people and doing the wrong thing. He didn't believe that anybody chooses to do the wrong thing. Nobody's inherently evil. Nobody just does the wrong thing on purpose. He thought that people only do the wrong thing out of ignorance. He has this quote. He says, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, and jealous and surly. They are like this because they cannot tell good from evil." He says, "The key to getting better is acknowledging one's own ignorance of their own actions." And then Carl Jung is another one of my favorite philosophers, kind of expanded the idea. Kind of what he delves a bit more into is a large part of self-awareness is being able to really accept yourself for who you are, right? He says, "Man's task is to become conscious of the contents that press upwards from the unconscious. A significant portion of who we are, what we like, and what we're capable of exists within the subconscious mind." Basically what he's getting into is he had this whole concept of your ego, right? Your ego is your brain's attempts to make you fit in. It's the part of you that you build to be able to fit in with the outside world, Like that same part of me that was, too busy crushing down all the stuff I like poetry and philosophy, to be like, no, I like rock and roll, to be cool, Your persona, a lot of the time, though, you're expressing yourself in a way the outside world still be seen a particular way, but it doesn't always line up with who you actually are. Sometimes, in order to accept who you actually are, you need to look back on mistakes you've made and accept them for what they are. Your ego, like for me, when I started kind of going down this path of removing my ego like that, I started looking back on some of the things I've done, and I realized that I've made a lot of mistakes and I haven't always been a good person. But when I first started recounting these stories to myself, I had kind of built them and rewrote these stories where I was the good person. It was somebody else's fault. It wasn't mine. I didn't do the wrong thing there. I tried my hardest. I just couldn't do any better. But it's like I had to kind of start peeling this all back and realizing that, no, I was the bad person. I was the one in the wrong there. It was ultimately a situation where I was the evil person. I was the one being ignorant. Part of getting better and part of being able to grow is radical self-acceptance. And Carl Jung expands on that by saying radical self-acceptance requires radical self-honesty. Large part of this is being able to actually backtrack what you've been through, how much of yourself you've been hiding, and how much of your mistakes you've been hiding. Being able to accept that you're a flawed person, being able to go back and realize how much you weren't always in the right and truly, truly accept that. It's the only way you're ever going to be able to grow. It's really easy to flip the script and kind of vindicate yourself because it's your shadow. No one likes looking at it. No one likes accepting the fact that you're not always as good as a person as you hoped or wanted to be. It's my identity of myself is, I'm a good person. I've always been a good person. So if I look back at some of the mistakes I've made, I'm like, no, it can't have been like that. I'm a good person. There's no way I would do that. But part of it is accepting that I did. I did do that. I made mistakes. I've done a lot of things that I regret. And part of it is being able to accept that it was myself. My identity is trying to reject it because it doesn't fit with my identity, but sometimes we do things out of character, Being able to let that stuff out is one of the hardest things you're ever going to be able to do. There's some things that I've spent 6-7 years of my life compressing and refusing to accept that I did. Years and years of my life, my brain has spent a lifetime trying to keep me from thinking about this stuff, and I'm trying to think about it and acknowledge it. It's exhausting. There's years and years of it to unpack, Pretending that your shadow is not there will not make it go away. You'll only acknowledge it, and you can become its master that way. It shakes the very foundation of kind of what you built of your character, though. But if you're willing to accept and kind of move past that point, you'll become a better person for it, If you can get through that portion, we can acknowledge the ugly portions of yourself, the weak portions of yourself, the stuff you're trying to work through, you can work towards who you're trying to become instead. Because now you're aware of it, you're the master of it, Now that we know who we are, we can focus on what we'll try to become. You can change these things, but you will only be what you let yourself be. If you aren't aware of any of these things, you're not going to be able to work on them remotely. A healthy perspective on yourself is the difference between who you are and who you will become. During that whole conveyor mess, with everything, I've been kind of unpacking and working through, the conveyor was nuts. It almost broke me. Like I know a lot of y'all didn't actually get to see it in person, but it was rough. There were points, where we'd have a dually truck come in and we'd have to have a kid down there at the end of the conveyor holding the belt on with the crowbar while I pushed the dually through the track manually, I put a bunch of towels on my head to keep the soap from getting off of me, But kind of what I told myself to get through it every day, what I've been doing to keep my good perspective every day is I keep that mentality in mind. It's what's my shadow? What parts of me are weak? What parts of me are holding me back, And something as small as just a conveyor being broke down, it's a big issue, don't get me wrong. But am I going to let that change who I am? I want to be a strong and capable person. Am I going to let the conveyor being broke down change me from being strong and capable? No, I'm not. I'm absolutely not going to. So every single day before I went in, I told myself that. I'm like, I don't give up. I'm not the kind of person that gives up. I'm not that person anymore. I'm strong and I'm capable now, and I'm going to work through this. One of the only things I like more than philosophy, though, is poetry. Poetry, you're able to kind of work these like intense philosophical concepts into a small, just couple of verses at a time, So I can kind of sit here and talk down blue in the face about what I think being a good person is and what traits I feel a good person should best possess. But when I was like 15, 16, I found this poem here, and I think it really kind of sums up my image of what it is to be a man, what it is to be strong and capable, what it is to be a good person. So if I can bother you all with it, I'm going to read it to you all real quick here. It's called If by Rudyard Kipling. He says, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you but make allowances for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired of waiting, or be lied about but don't deal in lies, or be hated but don't give way to hating, yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you've given your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it all on one turn of pitch and loss, and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they're gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings and not lose your common touch, if neither friends nor loving foes can hurt you, all men count with you but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything in it. And what's more, you'll be a man, my son. That's all I got for y'all.